Today on
Doomed!
Her Royal Majesty finally got him, folks. God save the Queen. This week, one of the OG conspiracy theorists, Lyndon LaRouche, passed away. I guess you can say, I don't know, when you mess with the Queen, you best not miss? I don't know. Anyway, on the show today, we have Jay, an activist whose sibling is a Lyndon LaRouche follower. And we're going to talk with him basically to find out, now that the cult leader's dead, what happens to the cult? Jay, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, Matt. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us. Absolutely my pleasure.
Same.
Now, Jay, give me a little bit basically about how you got into this whole, what do they go by again? Like LaRouches or something like that? That's what their nickname is or something like that?
That is what they're colloquially named by mostly outsiders, yeah.
Right. They don't call themselves that, right? Yeah.
Right, yeah. There's a few nicknames out there that I'll avoid using. But, yeah, how I became aware of it, did you say?
Yeah, like how did you sort of, how did Jay enter the world of Lyndon LaRouche?
Well, like you said, my sibling, who I was living with at the time, basically, long story short, started to show very distinct and drastic changes in their personality, their interests, their beliefs, I would say. And I was sort of mystified at first. Many of my family members were also mystified at first where this was coming from. And time went on, and they were going away for weekends and not really being sort of cagey about what was going on, and they were saying things like they were very into jazz music, and then suddenly jazz music became this thing that was not only silly and bad, but downright evil. And hearing a lot of things.
I get that.
Yeah. Who can account for taste? But when you start telling people that the music they listen to is satanic and all of this, we can get into that. But basically, all of these changes were happening, and I made the choice, the regrettable maybe choice, to invade my loved one's privacy. And I discovered the name Lyndon LaRouche, looked it up. It was in 2009, right at the height of the Obamacare debate, and front and center on the website, I see the big picture of Obama with a Hitler mustache, and my brain hit the ceiling. And I look from there. The internet is a great resource now for finding out about groups like this, and saw all about the history, the fraud trials, the anti-Semitism, the racism, the homophobia, all of this, all of the wealth of allegations that are out there, covered pretty well on the Wikipedia page, and the edit notes of the Wikipedia page are fascinating to look into, because you can see how the group has over the years tried to edit it and tried to take out the critical information and been shut down. And that was my entree into this world. Right.
Now, would you say it's fair? Like, well, let's actually jump back. But first, let me just mention how, I guess it's fair to say that whole Obama with the Hitler mustache time period for the LaRouche movement was, I guess, his big revival, his comeback. It's when he sort of reemerged on the scene, you could say.
Yes and no. They did get a lot of publicity out of that. Barney Frank had that moment with one of the LaRouche followers at a town hall that he did that year, where he said something to the effect of having a conversation with you is like trying to talk to a dining room table. I have no interest in doing it. You're standing there with a picture of the president, his face to face to look like Hitler, blah blah blah, and he actually had to debate her. Rachel Brown is her name. A couple of years later, when she ran against him for his seat, and they debated on like some public access thing in Massachusetts, and it's interesting.
It's something to. Is it a recommend? Should I like after
I mean, it's one of the deep cuts. If you're
right.
like, you gotta be a devotee to maybe have it hold your attention.
Maybe instead of watching finishing up the Ted Bundy tapes on Netflix after we jump off this episode, I'll pull up one of those deep cuts.
It's funny you should say about the Ted Bundy tapes, because I identified with one of the prosecutors in that when he said that I'm ashamed to admit that I'm elated he's gone.
Wow. Oh, now let's jump back. Actually, we're already way ahead. So I made some comments in the beginning, in the intro, about the Queen and the Queen Elizabeth, the British monarchy.
Yeah. Yes.
Why don't you tell my listeners why I was mentioning that stuff, why that's relevant?
Well, it's hard to pinpoint the exact moment, but for many decades, the Queen Elizabeth has been a frequent target of the LaRouche organization, in that they and he have claimed over the years that she is the world's premier drug pusher, that through the London British financial system, and at her direction, they have financed the spread of drugs throughout the world. They published a book in the 80s called Dope Incorporated, where they laid all this out in great detail. And one of the early editions actually featured an excerpt from the Protocols of the Elders of Zion. That is a tie-in. There are many that claim that when he talks about the British, he's talking about the Jews, and so that is a controversial. I can't claim to know that, but it's rather suspicious once you really deep dive in and see what he says. But the Queen is basically a placeholder for the British Empire, as he called them. To this day, they are the British Empire. They control. They are the ones who are currently acting against President Trump. And trying to have, all the Russia investigations are a coup d'etat against the president. That's where they're at now. But in the 80s, it was, the Queen is a drug pusher. That was just kind of their tagline.
Now, the LaRouche movement are Trump supporters.
Yes. They act as though they are. They have, I think, cynically done that. Because they think there's a niche for them with the now that Alex Jones is a household name, and there's so much of this sort of right-wing propaganda, they're just kind of another fish in the tank. They're not so special anymore. They've kind of painted themselves in the corner, in my opinion. But before the election, when they were basically saying a pox on both of their houses, and they actually recorded a song. They're big into music, classical music only, and they recorded a song with one of their choruses called "Don't Be a Chump for Trump," and the lyrics were such as "He's a flaming pustule on Satan's rump, don't be a chump for Trump." you can't find that today in their official websites because they've scrubbed it, but people have downloaded it and uploaded it elsewhere, so you can find it now.
So they were anti-Trump before they realized, like most right-wingers, that there's a grift here that they can take part in and actually benefit from being Trump fans.
Exactly.
It really is amazing to see everything come full circle. Even going as far back as Lyndon LaRouche, which we should actually even jump that far back. Now on this show, Doomed, I cover a lot of conspiracy theories, right-wing grifts, all that fun stuff, weird internet, and
this is all of that.
It is all of that, exactly, exactly, and it's so amazing to see, like, even like these older, because, like, listen, I bet I'm even not, like, I know who LaRouche is because I've come across his supporters from when I first got into politics when I was in high school in the early to mid 2000s. I saw their anti-Bush pamphlets and stuff. I saw their Obama Hitler mustache all the time. In fact, when I was working at Sam Cedar's The Majority Report, one day there was a LaRouche table literally set up across the street from the building we worked in, where the show was broadcast from, around the corner from the New York Times building in Midtown Manhattan. And they were just in the middle, like there was no event going on, no protests, no sort of political happening. I don't think they knew Sam Cedar was there, so I don't think, they were doing it because there was a sort of, well-known leftist working somewhere in the vicinity. They just happened to put out a table with the Obama with the Hitler mustache poster. It was just so random. I've seen them all over the place. But still, when it comes to, like, a lot of these conspiracy theorists, at least for as long as I've been it, Lyndon LaRouche, instead of, his career propelling as I got more and more into this stuff, he was already on his way sort of out of it. So to sort of, and I think that's where a lot of my listeners are, so to sort of, I guess, square them up with who Lyndon LaRouche is, let's go all the way back and tell me from the very beginning, who is Lyndon LaRouche? How did he get involved in any of this? How did he build up a movement? How did he even become this political figure that he became?
Wow, where to begin? So, just like with people like L. Ron Hubbard, the former leader of Scientology, there's a pretty wide gap between the origin story that the group will tell you versus what actually occurred, and what the details are pretty sketchy pre-1960s. But so I'll just sort of act as if I'm a LaRouche follower and tell you his origin story and kind of maybe debunk it along the way. But so he was born in the 20s. I think grew up in New Hampshire. His family was from Quaker roots. You can hear it in his voice. He has this sort of what I associate as a more upper class New England accent, and he. They tell what they love to tell the stories about when he was in high school. He talked about a lot of when I was in high school. They tried to teach me about geometry, and I told my teacher that they were full of it, and basically no school could hold me. He went to Northeastern University and he dropped out twice. He was drafted into World War II and was a conscientious objector based on his Quaker beliefs, until he finally, against his mother's wishes, served in World War II in Burma, I believe. They tell you that while there in Burma, he loves to tell the story. Loved, thank you, I'm speaking about him in the past tense now. Loved to talk about how when he was stationed there and he saw the true face of the British Empire in Burma and India, and that's where he was when Franklin Roosevelt died, and that was the advent of his political life. He knew that Roosevelt was dead, so the peace was no longer secured, and Truman was coming in and was a complete British toady and was going to plunge the world into World War III and extermination. And what actually is known is that he served in Burma, and that's it.
Right.
There's no great awakening there. He worked.
From the sounds of it, not to interrupt you, and please remember where you are. But from the sounds of it, and from what I was reading about him, because I honestly was very unfamiliar with his earlier life, it seems like he could have been considered a leftist back when in his youth. From a lot of this, I'm hearing.
Once we get to the '60s, I'll get there. But so after the war. He came back home and worked, I believe, in his father's business. They describe him as a management consultant for businesses, and that he was making himself as an economist. But he never finished college. He's not a scholar. His father owned a shoe company. He may have actually been a shoe salesman. We don't know. I'm not sure who knows that, but he through the 50s toiled away at that, dabbled in writing in some local newspapers, from what I understand, and then in the 60s we get to he's in New York. He's at Columbia University. Or what was called the Free University of New York, I think, and he starts basically just hanging out at colleges and attracting a following of young students who are some of whom are taking part in what was the Columbia student protests that I think surrounding the Vietnam War was happening. So he was like on the lawns with a bunch of people and talking and attracting followers that way. He was being called Lynn Marcus. He was calling himself Lynn Marcus. He was a Marxist. He described himself as a Trotskyist, and he had a faction. He was part of maybe a legitimate communist grouping for a little while until he sort of solidified his power, and there was a sort of schism in that group, and out of that grew what was called the National Caucus of Labor Committees, and that is the moment when it goes from a Marxist endeavor to a sort of quasi left-wing personality cult. And you can, I like to point people to the resignation letters from that time period of people leaders who left the organization, and what they said about him and his tactics. There was in 1973, he started talking about these other communist groups that are out there, and there was a thing called Operation Mop Up, where they would actually infiltrate other groups that they saw as competitors and get into street fights with them, and go in there. The legend has it that they would go in places armed with nunchucks, and I have found newspaper clippings and pictures of people supposedly who have been run into these people, and that was his. Out of that grew what was called the Labor Party, which brought him through the late 70s into the 80s, and I think his first run for president was in 1976. He was pretty obscure at that point, but now he had dropped Lynn Marcus and was Lyndon H. LaRouche Jr. again.
Is there any reason why he reverted back and forth in this way? What was his reasoning for even changing his?
Well, he sort of rebranded himself as a down home all American boy, and
LaRouche.
I think wanted to just distance himself from being associated with communism.
Right. So would you say that was his? I guess if this time in Lyndon LaRouche's life happened in, I don't know, sometime between 2015 and present day, he would have made. Would you say this was the moment where he would have jumped on YouTube and filmed the video saying that this was his red pill moment?
Possibly. And that time is also when he's forming alliances with a man named Willis Carto. If anybody's familiar with him, he ran a what was called the Institute for Historical Review, one of the premier Holocaust denial organizations of that time, and he's a main there may have been one meeting between him and LaRouche, but that's when you see in their publications anti-Semitism and racism really coming into being in a very open way.
Right. It's weird to square. I mean, I guess not really weird, but it's a big jump when you hear about his, that first half of his life you told me about, to where it's going. There's a quite a disconnect, and I guess it's not too far off actually from a lot of the people we saw that went from being weirdly anti-Republican sort of, some of them I always questioned how on the left they were, who all of a sudden during the 2016 presidential election just became rabid Trump supporters.
Yeah. Well, for him, I would say this jump was largely, it was largely a personal challenge that he went through. I think in the 70s, he was living in New York with his then wife, Janice Newberger, who they had a son. I'm sorry, he was married to her until they divorced in 1963. I'm reading things wrong, but he was seeing one of his followers named Carol White in the 70s, and she was putting him up in her apartment. Legend has it, and he was just a philosopher king living off of her, and she left him for Christopher White. They later married. Christopher White was another LaRouche follower, and he was British. So that it just so happens that was around the time that the British Empire became a thing. So there are those that say that this was what did it. This was what did it. What made him really jump from left to right.
This was his family court moment. Yeah,
exactly. And so Christopher and Carol White were.
Oh no!
They were actually. This was 1973, and this is the beginning of the brainwashing period, where he was having people confess to him, and Christopher White was supposedly subjected to pretty hardcore interrogation about how he was a spy coming in to destroy the organization, and this was the beginning. And people started leaving around that time. He wrote one. A piece called Beyond Psychoanalysis, where he kind of laid out his theory about how you brainwash someone. So 1973, I would say, is the moment, is his red pill moment.
So he's one of those guys who something happened to him in his personal life, and it changed his ideological beliefs, as opposed to someone who saw a grift and jumped on it.
Based on the facts in front of us, I think it's fair to wonder if that's true. Yes.
Right.
I try and be careful about what I know and what is hearsay. But
right, because listen, I gotta say, when I This is the first. This episode is the first time on this topic. Is the first time I actually had to go outside of names and people I knew and actually put out a call saying, "Hey, I want to do an episode on Lyndon LaRouche. Does anyone know anyone out there?" And I did come across a few experts. One who I had heard of before, but a lot of these Lyndon LaRouche experts actually are close in age to him and sort of hard to get a hold of, actually.
Sure, yeah.
And
go ahead.
Yeah, and so you had contacted me, and we talked for a very little bit, but this just your way of coming at it to me was so interesting because yes, someone could be fascinated by LaRouche and his movement. And also I could hear from someone who actually, and this would be a fascinating episode on its own, someone who actually left the movement. But again, that's sort of, there's things I think they would forgive because, they're probably still coming out of it. Who knows how long ago that was. Whereas you, I think, what fascinated me about when you told me what your sort of awakening to who LaRouche is that, you are someone who looked into him as if you were looking into him as you were one of these experts trying to write a book about him or something. But you were doing it because you had a family member who had fallen into this. And I think that sort of gives it a more sort of, we're really getting here, I think. We're going to get to, I think. And you sent me some great video clips I'm going to play in a little bit. But I think we're going to get to here, and we already did it a little bit with how this sort of is just all full circle. Just how LaRouche has sort of, and we could go into more of his beliefs too, and definitely the movement that grew. But how LaRouche sort of was, if not the godfather, one of the godfathers of sort of the modern day conspiracy theorist movements.
Yeah, it's I'm obviously biased, and back in 2009 when I first became aware of him, one of the only people who was interviewing outside of the group was Alex Jones, and he was not such a household name back then, but now he is, and once the Trump campaign got away in earnest and Alex Jones sort of became a household name, I felt like the world was catching up to me in an eerie way.
Right. This was back when, Alex Jones, you could watch Alex Jones and hear him talk about, aliens or how the government is spying on your brain through cell phone towers or something like that. And you could listen and laugh without knowing that his followers are also harassing the parents of young children who were murdered in a school shooting.
Right. Exactly.
Like, you could watch Alex Jones then and simply enjoy the ridiculousness of Alex Jones.
Yes, and there is a sort of, what you said before about ex-members speaking, I think, especially with groups like this, and I have had contact with a few ex-members. A lot of these people, I feel like I could understand this man and this group has taken 10, 20, 30, who knows how many years of my life. I need to leave this behind me. I can't spend another minute on this. And I think that's a large part of why a lot of people don't speak out, and it's just the sheer obscurity of LaRouche. To people who've heard of him, he's a punchline, he's a joke, he's people just if they're aware of him, they know that the meme from The Simpsons. Right.
He was actually, when I was looking up some videos to pull, I came across, I think it was like an old SNL sketch from when he was running for president.
Yes, it's sad that Al Franken is our best impersonation of him, given what's happened. But
right, that was Al Franken. Okay.
Yeah, that was pretty good.
Oh man, yeah. But Al Franken's recent problems aside, it's in he. And we didn't even touch on that. Maybe we could touch on that just a little bit about his sort of his move into the mainstream culture when he was sort of just like this fringe presidential candidate. He ran for what, 8 presidential elections?
I think it's 8. I think the last one was 2004.
Right. It must have been he was getting old and he just couldn't do it anymore.
Yeah, at a certain point it became silly.
And like I said, we'll play those clips in a bit, but from some of the clips you sent me, I think you could also tell there's some deterioration going on there in that guy's, whatever mind was there beforehand. You can see him going from at least talking in full, complete sentences about his conspiracies to sort of mumbling and not really even getting through a complete sentence with these.
One of them, I think it was the second one that I sent you, that he's more or less completely incoherent, and he's explaining to us what happened on 9/11, like the entire world didn't watch that. You know, he's explaining it blow by blow. You know, I'll let you play it, but
right. Let me pull that one up now. Actually, yeah, that one is. See, and you could tell me because there's something funny here about his recollection of the day. I believe that he just gets completely wrong, and you can tell us in a second. I'm gonna play that clip right now.
You've got to figure out what is the actual science behind the way.
Oh wait, this is not the clip. There's so many of them.
Sorry.
No, I'm happy you sent all these because these are all really great, actually. Okay, let me pull ahead into the. All right, let's get to it right here.
So what you then have is a situation, if you're looking just ahead a little bit, is how much do you think the American people are going to stomach?
Let's get to it. Here.
New road, build a new.
Wait, this isn't the 9/11 one. Man, these clips are insane. 1 second. This is the you know what? Let's just go through them all. Why not, right?
Okay.
And then I'll just, because it'll be easier that way. Let's go through them all. All right, so this first one is the one you sent, the Manhattan Town Hall. And this was weird to me to see people talking with him. And was he even in the room, it looked like?
No, he's like Skyping in. My name. I forget. Yeah, he was still in Virginia at this point, I think. He after the 9/11 clip, that was one of the last times, if not the last time, he spoke in public. And from that, his wife took him to Germany, where he died.
All right, let's play this clip now. He's taking a question from a supporter in the audience over live stream, over like Skype or something.
Yeah.
But I wanted to reference a quote that the bishop who gave the mass in Brooklyn on that Sunday.
Let's fast forward to his actual response there. We don't need to hear her quote from the bishop.
Couldn't get through. So he got off the truck and put on 60 pounds of equipment and ran to the towers and saved countless lives before losing his own life. And this is an event which draws thousands of Americans. These are people, I mean, we talk to people, obviously we talk to first responders, we talk to people who lost their loved ones, we talk to Americans who didn't lose anybody. And I know because I talked to them later and asked them, and so this is something which is American. It was a principle which is human, it's Christian, it's American, and it was a principle that you could say was an arc from the concerts to this victory in Jasta, which I would describe as nothing less than a miracle, what you just said.
Let me try to clarify a ghost which happened when the two towers, collapsed. What happened was it went out from Boston airport, with the Saudi purpose, grabbed the citizens in two concentrations in Boston, and in each turn, each of these things went down with the passengers, what had been the passengers, burned down. Huh? This happened. It got on. It was done by the Saudis themselves. It was done by the consent of the friends of the Saudis at the same time. For a long time, relatively speaking, since that time, that is what happened. I was a witness from a tower, a different tower, and I gave a record of this thing. I observed, in my own eyes, I observed what happened on that day. It is gone. That whole thing has been there since that time. Only recently, in the most recent days, we have finally escaped that horrible experience. Mm-hmm. And we should take pressure and pleasure in the fact that we have finally pulled ourselves together, and we have also thrown the Saudis out of the United States.
All right, they're clapping, and I gotta say, first of all, for people who are just listening to the podcast version of this and not getting the visual on YouTube, the first half of everything he said, was literally him looking down, reading something, and his bald head literally front and center, right in the camera. So everyone on YouTube got a nice treat to see Lyndon LaRouche's scalp. And that was nice and fun. But first of all, he said he saw what happened on 9/11. And Jay, I believe you have something to say about that.
Well, we, like I said, we all saw what happened on 9/11, and he makes some reference to I was in a different tower or something like. Right. He was in Virginia. He saw it on TV like we all did, or like those of us who are lucky did, and that was one of perhaps a dozen times in the last year, from like 2015 to 2016, that he was on an interview or a show of theirs of some point, doing exactly that, blow by blow, explaining what happened on 9/11, for no explicable reason. It's bizarre.
Now, I don't know if I guess I never realized, but apparently we also kicked every Saudi person out of the country at some point.
That was towards the end of Obama's presidency, when a bill called JASTA was passed, and it was to declassify the 28 pages that were blacked out in the 9/11 report that supposedly definitively proved that the Saudi government was behind 9/11. Now,
did LaRouche supported this act, though, correct?
Yes, but they when it happened, they claimed that they made it happen. And which is their trade. Whenever world events align to LaRouche's interests, it's because of him, and when things aren't going right, it's someone else's fault. It's the British. It's my wicked followers who've left me or stolen my money, or it's the credit he likes to take for anything he sees as he made JASTA happen.
Now, with all that said, though, I think I might blow this whole LaRouche movement up right now, end it all, by pointing out that they think that Obama is Hitler, but they supported
worse than
Hitler, excuse me. But they think that they supported this thing that Obama did. Then I guess the LaRouche people like Hitler.
Well, I think Obama tried to block. I don't know that Obama was involved in that. That was done in the Congress. I'm not sure I'm not sure they played along with that. I'm not sure.
Right. Okay. I get it. Now. Now, it's amazing how I couldn't find that clip when you first brought it up, and then I said, "Oh, let's just play them all," and of course, it's the first one I find when I play it. But let's go through them actually, because there's some more. There's some really good stuff here. So that was the Manhattan Town Hall event. Now let's play this LaRouche pack.
If you want to break,
this one is interesting. This one is this one was my favorite actually because
that's one of the ones that you can't find in their official channel. You know, there's certain things that he said over the years that they managed to scrub the video, but people managed to find it and clip it. But.
Right. Well, along with what he says here, I also really like the awkward, just the number of times there's awkward silence in literally what it amounts to be a 45-second clip. I did not know you can have like the perfect amount of silence that it's awkward that many times, like separate times though, within a 45-second clip. Everyone will understand what I mean when they hear it right now. I'm going to play it.
If you want to break from that, you've got to figure out, well, what is the actual science behind the way we're meant to behave? And there's a real statement of scientific principle there contained in the preamble.
In other words, where does a chimpanzee go to vote in the U.S. election?
I think at the White House. No. Anything else?
Does it for me.
Okay. Everything else, Lynn?
No, it's fine.
All right. Well, then we'll go ahead and wrap it up for this week. All right. Thanks a lot for watching, and we'll see you next week.
Now, again, for anyone just listening to the podcast, you had 3 LaRouche followers sitting together at a table, and they throw it to they're talking, and LaRouche just sort of butts in, and I'm assuming he's talking about Obama. Is that correct, Jay?
Yes. That I think you'd be a fool to say otherwise.
Yes, and it is important to point out that there's the 3 people who are at this table who are LaRouche followers. There's a woman. There is a George R.R. Martin cosplayer.
Yeah.
And there is a black man. And LaRouche, from his, I guess at this time he's still in Virginia.
Yes.
And it's more awkward that this guy is leading this movement and all his followers are together, and this guy is just this voice in the clouds, just butting in from his little office space whenever I guess he feels fit. And they let him, obviously, because he's the leader. And he just says this thing about Obama that really it doesn't make any sense to me. Where do chimpanzees go to vote? What, do you know the context and what he even meant by that when he was, I mean, other than the racist part of it?
Well, it's not the first time that he referred to Obama as a chimpanzee or a monkey or an ape. And my analysis of that clip, I think I'm stealing this from Dennis King, who wrote a book about LaRouche in the 80s. He's another long time. He might have been one of the people you were talking about before who's hard to get a hold of. But,
right. He's like, he actually is the guy who runs, when you like search Lyndon LaRouche on Google and LyndonLaRouche.org comes up and you assume, oh, that must be the guy's website. And it's not. It's this guy who's covered him. He runs the website.
Yeah. And, but I remember reading on his website something I think makes sense, which is the black man you refer to was a leader at that time. He's now out of the organization, and it seems like LaRouche he was a major leader. He was like looking to be maybe a successor to LaRouche at that point. And when someone is, and that beginning of that clip, he's ending some remarks. And when it seems like, especially in the later years, when it seems like his dementia is taking hold and he's sometimes maybe not clear about if he's talking to if these are public remarks or I'm not sure what his awareness is that he can be heard outside of the group, because they have a lot of internal discussions too, so he might just be thinking he's just talking, but it seems like someone other than me looks a little too smart right now, so I've got to cut him down to size and make a joke about chimpanzees. That's what it looks like to me.
Do you think that was also while clearly Obama thing, You think that was also in reference to the guy who actually supports him too? Like,
I do think so. Yeah.
yeah, I had that feeling too, and I thought it was very, very weird that he would throw someone who follows him. Like, I mean, I guess it's not when you hear about cult leaders, but
And not just any member. He was a leader in the group.
Right.
He was a major. Yeah.
right, makes a lot of sense. Now let's continue on with these clips because they're really they get more just a sight to behold. I don't even know how else to explain them. Let's get to this fireside chat. Did they do these every week? It seems, or it seems
They still do. They did one just yesterday, I think.
Oh, how are they reacting to his death?
How are they reacting? I mean, it's a loss to humanity. We have to work ever harder now to realize his vision for the world, and humanity has suffered a great loss, and if we don't follow what he wanted, then we're all gonna die.
Right, of course. Makes sense. I mean, all right, I'm going to play this fireside chat, which, by the way, is the YouTube video is titled The Sputtering British Coup Against Trump, even though this particular portion I'm going to play has nothing to do with that. I don't think.
So, but the clip, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
The clip, this is I think from yesterday, and they're playing a clip of him from the 70s at this point.
Oh, okay, got it. Right. All right.
It's like, yeah.
That's this one. Okay, got it. Cool. I'm playing it right now.
Idea of new economic platforms. This is an example from July of 1978.
Right.
They're
introducing the clip
Lyndon
now.
LaRouche put forward of this type. So can we
Very
hear that
serious
next
proposal,
clip?
I'm sure. Here we go.
Craters.
Excuse me, Dennis, do you want to play the Nuplexes too?
That's Nuplexes 1.
Oh, they're having the same issues I had where they were playing the wrong clip. Good to know that I share that with the LaRouches.
We're going to build Nuplex. We lay it out to them. How you build a Nuplex? Well, you go out and you dig a big crater. You lay a big footing, unless you've got bedrock, which even that off. You don't even care what the terrain is like. Makes no difference. Wherever you are, blast it out, build a crater. Build a crater covering an area the size of a city. A city of 500,000 people, or 100,000 people. But build a crater for an industrial city of a new type on an area of that size. All right, 6, 7, 8 stories below the surface. Build it up. Build up to the surface. On this thing, stick 2 nuclear plants. 0.5 gigawatts to 2 gigawatts each. You get a balanced load. String industries around this, using this energy to cut low distribution costs, like charm bracelets. Well, let's put a chemical industry here, that's the good thing. Let's have desalination here, so forth. Using the waste heat and the electrical power. Build housing for the families, modern housing to last 100 years. For the families of the people who are going to be brought in to do the construction, which will be done, completed within a period of 4 to 6 years. Build the on-site cultural ed program, schools, universities, technical schools, everything that a city requires. And when the project is completed, at the end of 6 years, these people occupy the factories because they've been educated. And gradually the Europeans and others who have been phased in, phase out, except for a few key technicians. The city then is built.
Except for a few key technicians.
You can change it. You can develop it with no big cost. Its transportation systems are built in. And modular for the next 100 years. For any technological improvements which will be significant in the next 100 years. The city functions. City buildings. Now, 4 to 6 years. We're going to build hundreds of these in the next 25 years. Hundreds of them. Hundreds of new cities throughout the world, especially in the developing sector. These cities will be linked together. They will form a network of high technology culture, planted in the middle of the rest of the population. And from these cities and through these cities and their universities and technical schools and technical services to the surrounding area, we'll lift one generation of the human race up from barbarism and oppression into modern life. And in the next 25 years following that, we'll complete the job. And within 50 years from now, the human race will be transformed as we city builders intend to do it. We're going to mobilize every industry that exists that's viable and every one that can be created to do this. We're not going to export a few $10, $20 billion worth of additional exports. We're going to export hundreds of cities.
That vision.
Now, Jay.
Yes.
I guess we could. He could have updated the that saying, socialism or barbarism. He could have LaRouche or barbarism. That's what it sounded like to me. But his vision was very influential to how we live today. As you all know, those hundreds and hundreds of cities were built, and we are all living that life today. He was a visionary.
Yeah, and I think this is just one of the reasons that people like to attach the word fascism to him, because it sounds to me, when I listen to that, I think you're going to need a lot of slave labor to do that. I think you're going to have to actually force people to do that. That sounds weird to me.
Right.
That you think that's possible, but
right.
I'm just a lay person. What do I know?
Honestly, that is really the if you were listening to that and you had to come up with something to say about it, I mean, that really was perfect, because I honestly had no other way to respond to that. It's just so out there, and you need a lot of people to dig a lot. That's true, right?
Yeah,
and
just blow lots of holes in the earth. Just build the cities. Yeah. Okay.
Right. And
it's easy.
Right. And now you sent me one more clip that I have to play, because this is another older clip of him. And I have to say, though, while listening to this clip, I hate to say it, this guy could have got a gig on MSNBC today.
Oh yeah? Is it the Russia one?
Yeah. Let me play.
Who's saying that on MSNBC?
Not quite that, but
Oh dear.
You get a lot of the Red Scare thing is big among centrist liberals right now.
I guess.
It's yeah. This whole Trump thing has turned people really xenophobic against the Russians and that whole section of the world. But let's play it, because this is even a step. Obviously, this is steps way too far.
Well, the modern day LaRouche was saying that he was a great friend of the Russians, and that Putin loves him, and that they had so much sway in Russian. They're complete Putin apologists. But anyway.
Here we go.
Take the Russian out of Russia, out of Holy Moscow, out of Matushka Rus, out of Rodina, and you bring that Russian into Western civilization, assimilate him in Western civilization. Not, of course, in the Shigaria, in Hamburg, but, real civilization. This Russian, as we know from Russian immigrants into Western Europe and the United States, this Russian is just like the rest of us, essentially, most of the time. But he becomes a productive worker, very skilled, moral, as we are moral. But you take his relative back in Russia, in Great Russia, and what have you got? You have a lazy, drunken, superstitious, immoral beast. That's a typical Russian. The Russian hates technological progress. The Russian hates that sort of thing. There are few Russians that can produce. Well, they have a military dictatorship, so they take all the productive Russians and they put them in the military sector. Right? And they all the dumb Russians who can't behave, who can't do anything, they put them in the civilian economy. And they make the civilian economy work by using slave labor from Turks and others, or by slaving and looting Eastern Europe. We in the West have actually twice to three times the productivity
per person of the Russians. Because we can assimilate and enjoy assimilating technological progress. We generate it and assimilate it. Russians can produce scientists, but they can't make their civilian economy work. Because the scientists cannot get the idea assimilated and accepted by the public.
Now, I don't even know what to say about this. I just think it's interesting to see where he's, we didn't play them in order, but to see the progression of, just how terrible the stuff he was saying back then was. But, like we were just talking about before, the deterioration in this guy throughout the years, and how he was still able to maintain this foothold, though, in so many people's minds with this movement of his. It's stunning to me. It's, I don't see how you listen to that clip and you're like, even back then, and you're taken by this guy. And then to fast forward to today and hear his mumblings of 9/11 and that crowd that was listening to him clapping after that regurgitation of garbage. I just don't get it. And I don't want to spend too much more time on Lyndon LaRouche, the guy, because I do want to talk a little bit more about the movement and where it goes from here, and your personal experience with that. But I guess we could take it to so he was against Bush, he hated Obama. Do you have a sense of who he disliked more?
Between the two?
Yeah.
I mean, when Obama first came on the scene, he was saying he had potential. Maybe he was the next FDR. And when he took office, he was saying we must protect the president because he's under great threat of assassination. But then shortly thereafter, once the Affordable Care Act became part of the debate, he started saying this was the beginning of what. He compared it to the T4 Hitler program that started the Holocaust,
So,
and this was,
What was it about Obama that he liked? Like, I really, honestly, Lyndon LaRouche is so confusing to me on, like, where he is on the ideological spectrum. Like, I clearly his movement is a right-wing movement, but
I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, please go ahead.
I again compare him to L. Ron Hubbard, and the question often asked of people like these cult leaders, do they believe their own bullshit or not? Are they willfully? Are they? LaRouche is so all over the map that it's hard. It's hard to put him on the political spectrum. He's all over the map. I think most of the time he's just kind of winging it and
right.
Saying and doing what will, it's very rarely for public consumption because he's speaking to the already converted. But
what are people like? Listen, I totally you show me like a serial killer with a fan base. You show me like a Charles Manson documentary or something. Like, as crazy as those people are and how horrible, those people are terrible people, obviously. But you see sort of what attracted people with weak minds to them. Whereas this guy, I can't pinpoint what it is exactly that sort of brings people to him. I don't find him charismatic. I don't find him sort of compelling. It's like I find what he says to be crazy, but it's not crazy in a way that makes me think he's smart. It's like, maybe that's it. Maybe I'm just not getting it in terms of that aspect. Maybe that's the thing that gets people.
Well, my thing is, I think charisma is something that's pretty subjective, and one person's charisma is another's. However, we see Lyndon LaRouche, and I think this sort of leads into me talking about the group where it really, in my opinion, depends on where you are in your life when you're introduced to it and how you're introduced to it, and they don't give you all the crazy at once.
Right.
They're very controlled about what they introduce you to and when.
Right. And sort of I'm discussing here to sort of get, to sort of throw some things out there and see exactly, because you're bringing up points that I did not think of before. But my assumption with the Obama thing, my personal opinion is that, he's jumped back and forth because this is a guy who was following the grift in some cases at this point. Like we see with their current, the movement's current, really embracing Trump. Back before the ACA, I guess, it was cool to like Obama across the board. He was going to be the guy who saves us from Bush. And then I guess once the ACA, once the ACA comes into effect, there was enough on the right to sort of jump to that side of things.
The issue is also, they had a big recruitment drive around the Iraq War when that happened. That was the beginning of what became called the LaRouche Youth Movement, where a lot of leaders were recruited. They're not so young anymore, and many have left. But what was I going to say? I think his brand, ultimately what LaRouche's brand is he's, the saying, a stopped clock is right twice a day. His whole thing is the economy's collapsing. Everything's going to fall apart any minute now. And you have to do what I say or else, or we're all going to die and there's going to be thermonuclear war. So you don't get anywhere by supporting the president. It was literally a few months there he was, kind of skeptically praising Obama, and then the full, once, like you said, once the ACA came in, it was full Hitler. But he's always got to have something to point to say the world is falling apart.
Right.
Right now.
And now he's dead.
And now he's dead.
So do we know how he died? Was it MI, whatever they are? What is it again? Now I'm having a mental block. MI5, is that who they are? Yeah, right. I think so. Right?
Well, it'd be in Germany, so I think that'd be MI6.
Oh, okay. Okay.
If I'm right.
Okay, so, or maybe the Queen went out there and got up on a building, top of a building and took him out herself.
It's hard to say. They haven't said, but I imagine it was something related to. There's people saying that he was showing signs of dementia as early as 2006. So this was a long process. Some along the way he was coherent enough to get things going, but you can see the deterioration pretty clearly in those later clips that he just needed to be sort of disappeared, and he hadn't been heard from for almost 3 years at this point. Until Tuesday, when the rumors broke on Twitter, I think because ex-members started getting word, but they weren't, talking to the press until the next day. But I imagine it was, he was 96. It was something.
Right. Now that did. I remember that. I remember that. It just happened a couple of days ago. But I heard, it was 2 days ago that the news broke that he died. But then no one really covered it. And then everyone sort of thought that, false flag,
Right. I mean, they, that whole day they could have put that to bed and said he's still alive, and they didn't. So it was pretty clear to me, I think, that he was gone.
Now, how did in those 3 years where he basically disappeared, how were they, were there people who thought maybe he was already dead and they didn't know about it? Like, how were they continuing with this? How was the movement, his followers going on?
That was what I was afraid of for a long time. Did he die 2 years ago? And they're just saying that he's still there. But it's his wife who's largely running things now by appearances, who he was one of his supporters. They got married in the 70s after that whole debacle that I explained before about Chris and Carol White. Her name is Helga Zepp LaRouche. Hyphen Zepp LaRouche, and she has a sort of tenuous grasp on things now. We'll see where it goes, but I think they were kind of cultivating among the supporters that even if he can't be the public face anymore, he's still somewhere in the background reading the newspaper and guiding things. I think it was just that.
Now, when your sibling, when you find out that your sibling is in this movement, you said it much earlier in the show that you looked into why your sibling was changing so much, and you determined that I get where you come across the LaRouche propaganda, the pamphlets and stuff.
Yeah.
So what goes on there? So clearly from there you jump into this. You learn as much as you can about this, which is why you're helping guide us through the world of Lyndon LaRouche today. Now, when have you last heard from your sibling? Roughly, if you don't want to give out the
Yeah, I have to be careful about what I say, but
Right. Has it been a long time, like a few years, or you can just say like they only give an exact?
they're still in contact with other members of my family, but not with me directly for quite some time.
Right, and it's because your sibling knew that you were
Yes,
learning about
I showed my hand way too soon in that regard. One thing I should say is, I've used the word cult a few times. We've used the word cult a few times, and when a cult comes to your door, you find that the word cult is not a very useful word in describing these things. I always quote my therapist, and that's what I recommend to anybody who's come into contact with this organization, is to get a therapist right away. But my therapist says there's a very good reason why the word cult is contained in the word culture, and I started using that word a little too soon, and many experts, the few there are in these things, will tell you that you shouldn't be using that word and talking too much about the group and things, and maybe trying to connect with the person on a more emotional level. And I was not equipped to do that in my panic, and I was kind of the only one in my family who was raising the alarm about this. And
I got to be honest with you. You're like, if I came across this stuff for a family member of mine, I probably would have been I may have disregarded it too at first. And this is coming from someone who reads about a lot of this stuff, because to me, just from the LaRouche stuff that I've seen, that they hand out and spread, before they hit you over the head with the big picture stuff, it does just seem sort of like, not too far out, but, maybe like a little bit fringy political stuff, not too crazy where I'd be concerned quite yet. Do you know what I'm saying?
yes, and I think the things that alarmed me the most when I looked into it was reading about the trials, reading the trial transcripts, reading his statement on sentencing where he compares himself to Jesus Christ and expresses no remorse, and there's no acknowledgement for there's plenty of information out there about the fraud trials in the late 80s, all throughout the 80s really, prosecuted by a little known federal prosecutor named Robert Mueller.
It's amazing how this all comes. And he was friends with Roger Stone too.
Roger Stone has been at one of the front groups is called the Schiller Institute. Schiller as in Friedrich Schiller, the German philosopher. He was speaking at a conference for the Schiller Institute as early as late last year, when it was looking pretty dire for him, and he was like pretty clearly trying to troll them for money, and asking for people to make donations to his legal fund.
And to really bring it all together, this I just found out while researching this week, when Russia was looking into spreading misinformation during the 2016 campaign, they reached out to the LaRouche movement.
Yes, that's in the Steele dossier, I think.
Right. That was mind-blowing to me, that because at this point in 2016, LaRouche folks are sort of, obviously to people who have family members in the movement, this isn't the case, but to the mainstream public and even the political wonks, LaRouche is out of everyone's vision at this point, pretty much.
Yeah.
Really incredible.
Yeah, you said it. I'm not sure I have much to add.
Right. So let's get back to your experience here. So you show your hand. You I guess you approached him, your sibling.
Yes.
And clearly, I guess if this was today, you would say something like, "Are you a stan for Lyndon LaRouche?"
Yeah, we didn't have that language back then, but
Are you a LaRouche stan? I mean, I guess that would have been helpful then,
Yeah, I could be more specific and maybe make it a little clearer, but I have to be careful and just say that I reacted with anger where I should have been more understanding and just projecting concern more than anything else. And by the time I was asking him more calmly to look at the critical information that's out there, he was already pretty far gone,
right,
into it. And yeah, it's
No, I'm totally not bringing this up to if I was in your shoes, it would have been the same. Once I realized where this was going, same reaction. So I don't want you to feel like you really it's you had the reaction that I think 99.9% of people would have.
Well, I appreciate that.
But where I'm headed with this is because there's a reason why for people who are watching on YouTube right now, usually I do the split screen with the guest unless there's reasons why they can't. And the LaRouche movement, I'm guessing your sibling told them, or they found out somehow that you were, you were out there trying to tell people that LaRouche was no good.
Yes, there's over the years been a number of message boards where ex-members will congregate and wring their hands about what's going on in LaRouche world. And I was on that after my sibling moved and overexposed myself a little bit. They had a few trolls lurking in there to antagonize people, and I sort of would, in my anger, engage with them, and I overexposed myself a little bit and got into some trouble. But
now, when you say, did they come at you hear these things about other, and I don't know if I should put all these people of these groups in this category, but I think I feel good doing it. Scientologists, people who, hell, I think you could go as far as saying, people who who were into, cults like Jonestown. You hear these stories about these groups, no matter how they try to portray themselves in public, when they find out that there's someone who's getting a little bit too on the inside and knows a little bit too much, they suddenly become that whole goody two-shoes facade goes right out the window.
It's true, and I didn't get it too bad. I was doxxed. They were monitoring my Twitter account and posting things to say certain things that might damage my credibility. Depending, I retweeted something. And they put it on their website and connected me to this is who is posting on this website under this name on FactNet, it was called back then. That's now no longer. It was sort of a message board leaning towards cults and yeah, I just kind of overexposed myself without thinking about it enough. But I didn't get it. I didn't get it too bad. But since then I contacted you through like a dummy Twitter account, that I
Right, I felt bad. I'm not gonna give anything away, but I asked you a little bit about yourself just so I could confirm, because who knows? The past couple of episodes, I mean, right wingers have always been following me on Twitter and stuff, but the past couple of episodes especially had some trolls from that alt-right social network Gab watching the show, so I had to be careful I wasn't being fooled into having someone on who ended up not being the LaRouche expert I thought they were.
Yeah, if you had called that first number that was left on your original message, that you would have been talking to one of those people. He was Paul Glumas, I think is his name.
Right.
But anyway,
you saw that? Yeah, they were recommending me. I saw someone recommended me, and I looked the guy up, obviously. And the guy, he's a LaRouche guy, right? Like, he's a follower of LaRouche.
Yeah, long time.
I mean, I did say I'm interested in talking to a follower, but I think I was interested.
Oh, I'm fascinated what you could get from him, but
yeah, maybe I will do it. Yeah. I mean, I've been actually since the new year. I mean, last year I had on like a right winger or two. I've already had on one this year. I'm on a crusade to have as many, I'm a leftist. I usually have leftists on the show to talk about the right and to even talk about, leftist policy and ideology and stuff like that. But I'm on this like newfound, mission to get more right wingers, more people who don't think or agree with me on this show, because I just have so much fun talking with them. But I think I'll do it. I mean, why not? But let's get back to, I think what I want to sort of end here with is, and I could go on with you about this stuff forever because this is so fascinating, is do you think the Queen is safe now that LaRouche is gone? And no, but really, what do you think? Have you seen basically anything about where the movement goes? Actually, like I know we briefly talked about before what their reaction was to LaRouche being dead and this being the end of the world. But, you said his wife is sort of taking, a hold of everything going on now. Do you know sort of what the outlook is for these folks? And do you think, what do you think is going to happen to your sibling? Like, does this movement grow and your sibling has more people who are with it, him or your sibling? Or do you think that, your sibling ends up being one of these, stragglers or hanger-ons on this dead movement and he's just, alone in this world?
Well, it's a scary thing, and I managed to contact the person who recruited my sibling, who is out now, who explained a lot to me about how this all worked and how it works in general when people are being recruited. And it's a scary thing because there, like you said, there are so many older members who some of them have been in since the 70s, and they are completely isolated from their former life. They have nowhere to go. If the, it's. I mean,
even the most recent like big LaRouche pushes in the mainstream, the things that would have actually brought in new members, we're talking at the earliest about a decade back now.
Yes, and they can't, like I said before, with they're trying to support Trump and saying that Trump is okay, but he just has to adopt LaRouche's plan, and then it'll be fine. But in general, like I said before, they're just another fish in the alt-right pond now, and I think we'll see where things go, but I think things deteriorate more. There's people, there's recent ex-members saying that there's been a lot of people who have been waiting for this moment for LaRouche to die to make their exit, and they've been planning to get out. They've been sending, as their numbers dwindle more and more, they've been, a lot of the, people still there are being sent out to get jobs, and I can't prove this, but it's my fear that these people are being sent out to get jobs so that they can be giving a tithe basically to the movement. and keep things going for however much longer Helga feels it will go. But you could go a lot of ways. There could be purges. She's in Germany and doesn't have probably a firm hand on all of the factions that might be developing now, and we could see a struggle for leadership. Someone might want to take up the mantle for themselves, or I'm not sure what position she's in, if she can be challenged, or if we say that LaRouche was at all charismatic, she doesn't have what he had. Like she's not not a very engaging speaker. You won't catch her saying the wacky things that he says. She's pretty straight ahead, like still in that ideology, but she's not flying off the cuff like LaRouche was in the last 15 years. So I don't think she's going to have that working in her favor. But yeah, I can't pretend to know what it looks like on the ground right now, but it's pretty dire, and the disadvantage that they have is that they're a registered political action committee and they have to report their finances to the FEC. And when you go on the FEC website and look at their financial reports for all the election cycles, the numbers are going down, and they're going down and down and down, and the debts are rising, and you can see that they don't. And I'm just a layperson, but they don't behave like other political action committees do. They're not giving money to candidates. They occasionally will run candidates, but they'll give them token amounts of $500 to $1,000 when the total income is in the millions. And so
they're still pulling in millions of dollars.
Not the latest report is. I think it's over $1 million.
But it's going down though, right?
It's going down consistently, and that all that you can look at their expenditures, and all of the expenditures go to this for-profit company called the LaRouche Policy Institute LLC, and my understanding, again, I'm just a layperson, but my understanding is that Freedom of Information Act requests are a bit easier to make now that he's gone. And this is my personal opinion, but if there would be anybody listening who would be interested or has the power to make a Freedom of Information Act request for either the Schiller Institute or the LaRouche Policy Institute LLC. I don't know if that's possible, but if it is, it's my belief, my very biased belief, that you will find crimes in there.
Wow. Well, do you know what kind of crimes?
Fraud.
Oh, just okay. I was hoping maybe.
So when people talk about campaign finance reform, this is what I would like. There was a pretty interesting article.
I was thinking maybe some collusion crime, some sort of.
Who knows?
Right.
But I'm pretty sure that LaRouche, being a felon himself, and many of his underlings who are still in control of the organization being felons, I am pretty suspicious that this is all on the up and up now. And
so it sounds like LaRouche took a good time picked a good time to say peace.
could be. I'm not sure.
Now I just want to end it with this. We received a comment in the YouTube chat from listener Grimlock, who said, my dumbass stepfather donated to him because he thought he was actually labor. I had to explain to him to get that shit the fuck out of our house. So I hope Lyndon is burning in hell.
Well, it's uncomfortable for me to endorse that kind of language, but I am anonymous here, but there's a chance that someone could recognize my voice. But,
right. So I get it, Jay. I get it.
I heard that comment.
Jay, thank you really so much for joining us today and sharing it's a personal story, and it's not easy to tell, I'm sure. And I think you, not only the personal story, but you've immersed yourself into learning about this guy. And, if your sibling somehow comes across this clip, this interview and listens, I just want to say that it should be just clear from everything you told me today that you care so much about this person, and they should at the very least contact you and just give you an update about how everything's going.
I really appreciate that. And if I could just spend one more minute saying something.
Sure.
There's a woman named Erica Duggan. She is British. Her son was a young student, 22 years old, who was studying abroad in France, made his way during, it was in the height of this early 2000s when the Iraq War was happening. He ended up in Germany at a Schiller Institute conference. You can go to justiceforjeremiah.com to find out what happened to him. But long story short, he ended up dead on the side of a highway. There's accounts that I probably shouldn't go that deep into it, but they're still trying to find out what happened to their son. And I heard Erica Duggan speaking about this to the British press when an inquest was going on, and I heard her say that something to the effect of the only reason that I can speak about this group is because my son is gone, and that there are lots and lots of people. It's hard to quantify at this point, but there are lots and lots of people who are worried, concerned, and frightened for someone they know in this group, and they must suffer in silence because if they speak out, they will alienate the person they're trying to save. And if I could just address her directly and say, Miss Duggan, I heard you. I thank you, and your words have carried me to this day where I feel more comfortable speaking because while I may be taking a risk in doing this, I think they have bigger problems than me at this point.
Jay, really, I thank you so much for joining us on the show today. I can't thank you enough. And, if I ever need to jump into this world again, I know exactly who to talk to. It's one that I think is really undercovered, even when it was sort of in everyone's sort of daily news cycle, when they would see these people out on the street with their pamphlets and their Obama Hitler mustache signs. They were always, if this was happening nowadays, in the same time as the alt-right, and there's a lot of, mirror image here going on between the two groups, in many ways. Would they be undercovered? And I just don't know. Maybe the LaRouche movement just happened to slip by just being where they were at that place and time.
Yeah, I'm not sure what to add to that, but...
Jay, take care. Thanks a lot.
All right. Thank you, Matt.
All right, everybody. To support this show, go to patreon.com/MattBinder. That's patreon.com/MattBinder. Could really use some new patron subscribers. Like I said in the last episode, there was some sort of issue with Patreon. Some people who had their processing declined for some reason were able to fix it because of whatever was going on with Patreon's payment processor. But we did lose a few people because of that issue. And of course, obviously, we always want to gain people every episode if possible. Patreon.com/MattBinder. You will get... first of all, you support this show happening every week, just in general. I can't do this without the support. You also will get the audio file of the patron-only part of the show, which I will be going into right after I finish these promos. You could also support this show by going to iTunes, typing in Doomed. Google Play, typing in Doomed. And leave a review. 5-star review, written review. We're at on iTunes. I haven't checked the other various platforms, but on iTunes, we got over 100 reviews easily. But let's go to 200 next. And what else do I want to say? Oh, Doomed.tv will take you to the YouTube channel. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel. I'd really like to grow this YouTube channel, but I'd like to do more with the YouTube channel because the YouTube channel allows me to really, with the podcast, I like to do a full episode, that's once a week. Again, a nice guest. But with the YouTube channel, I'd like to grow that so I could do maybe a shorter 1, 2, 3, 4-minute clips throughout the week too. That would be great. Love to do it. Need your support on YouTube. Need your support on iTunes and Google Play and with all that. And especially if you can afford to, again, only if you can afford to, your financial support at patreon.com/MattBinder. And to show you how much I appreciate those patrons, I'm going to name them all before we go into the members half of the show. Abigail T, Adam Q, Alan B, Andrew H, Benji A, Bobby M, Brett R, Brian James D, Brooke H, Christine H, Clement C, Colin R, Dank Uger, Dave K, Dragon Slayer 19, Emily M, Fraz K, Francis Z, Ian Curtis J, Jameson Test, Janelle A, JR, Jasmine H, Jeff K, Josh C, Julie, Katie S, Louis from Texas, Marcos R, Max Wanderman, User Me, Michael J, Michael M, Misfit Demit, Mr. Danks, Mugrim, Nicole A, Nam Denet, Omid M, Romina O, Cena, the good folks over at Struggle Session. I just realized they became patrons. Thank you so much, guys. TM, Tamni G, Thaddeus A, Tom G, Tom M, Trinae E, Will P, and Zarin. Weirdly missing from my patrons is a certain Michael Brooks. Maybe he's having money issues. He's only got, 2,000 patrons now. Oh, boy. Always love... Oh, yeah, and I gave... who did I give? Kennedy and... Who else did I give? I gave some people moderator status in the chat today. I hope they... First of all, I don't know if they were in there moderating. But the chat seemed like it was well put together. So if you guys are in there moderating, thank you. I appreciate that. I'm talking about the YouTube live chat. And folks, that is the free portion of the Doomed with Matt Binder podcast / YouTube live stream if you're watching on YouTube live via stream. And see you all next time on Doomed. I really need to get a song for the members. Someone a couple episodes ago jumped in saying they did this. They redid the, they're the ones who did the promo songs and the new intros or whatever for Majority Report and for Michael Brooks. Who was that? If you guys in the chat know, send them my way. Should probably update everything. It's a new year. Doomed is a year old now. We've approached a full year's worth of episodes. We should have everything refreshened a bit, I guess. Refreshened a bit. Well, anyway, before we go to the comments, now, my guest Jay was really fantastic about Lyndon LaRouche. I honestly did not even consider doing an episode of Lyndon LaRouche on this podcast that covers conspiracy theories and right-wingers and all that fun stuff. Yeah, until he died this week. And I'm so glad he died. So I was able to think of doing that episode. And Jay was fantastic. Better than I could have ever expected. As just a guy who has a family member whose life was really taken over by this LaRouche cult. And he sent me all the clips we played in that first half. And I had pulled 2 clips of my own. These are not LaRouche. I didn't want to play them with him on because I still need to figure out, using this program I use, how to get the Skype guest to hear what I'm playing. But he was familiar with those clips that he had sent me. But I pulled these 2 clips basically to show how the LaRouche followers sound when they do videos for the movement. And it was really stunning to me to watch these because they're weird. They're far out there. The way these guys are talking, it's very much, it feels very like you're watching like North Korean state TV or something like that. Let me play the first clip here. It's very weird. They're not long. They're not as long as the LaRouche ones. But let's play this one. This one's titled, Yes, the Queen Pushes Dope. And it's from the LaRouche Pack YouTube channel.
The pattern of global destabilization we see today is centered on the criminal financing of British-sponsored international terrorism, funded largely through the opium produced in Afghanistan, otherwise known as the dope trade. The British monarchy, engaged in multiple genocidal practices, is promoting drugs as part of an attempt at worldwide mass murder. That explains the monarchy's current push to destroy the Catholic Church, their greatest opponent against the genocidal scheme. As LaRouche addressed the situation, we'll wish to say next to nothing here about British sex practices, such as those associated with Lord John Maynard Keynes and others. But we'll stick to the issue of Her Majesty's government's resort to the combined practices of genocide and dope pushing. With that in mind, here we will focus on that one aspect of British-sponsored genocide.
Okay. It's weird how, the British monarchy throughout history has taken part in genocide. That's true, yeah. I don't know if the Queen is pushing dope. And really bizarre hero in this tale, the Catholic Church fighting the good fight against the British monarchy. But, okay. But the delivery is really what, obviously what he said is what I've also focused on. But the delivery stood out to me as weird, but, excuse me, not as weird as this one, which is called Lyndon LaRouche declares war on the British Empire. And this one's really short. And again, these guys are really obsessed with the Queen and the British royals. But let's play this one because the delivery on this one is the most out there.
We are at war with the British Empire and the fascists trying to take over our nation. The British are now in an all-out offensive to discredit this administration and to destroy the potential for a real economic policy modeled off of the solutions Mr. LaRouche is proposing from coming out of the United States. We must not tolerate this. The defense of our republic is at stake.
Doesn't sound like, she's having a great time, or is, who knows? Who knows? But just bizarre. And again, what's the obsession with the Brits? Yeah, Jay said it, and he's definitely, I think he's right about the whole anti-Semitic background on that one. But why not just go with, and they do talk about the Rothschilds, but why not just go with that in general? Why bring the British? Jeez. These guys. Let's go to the YouTube comments. Ryan Tennant, I'm starting to think you're broadcasting at the same time as Michael Brooks is on purpose now, Matt. It's, his show is on Tuesdays. My show is on Thursdays, usually. We both went against that and decided to do Friday this week. My show, to be fair to him even, his show was planned before mine. I really wanted to do a show on LaRouche. Yesterday was Valentine's Day. I wasn't going to do a show on Valentine's Day and have my significant other sitting on the couch or watching TV by herself while I sat here talking about Lyndon LaRouche. But as much as I love you guys couldn't be my Valentine this year. Or hopefully for my sake, not any year after either. But still love you. But anyway. And actually next week I can't do Thursday either because next Thursday I have to do something. And I will let you guys know what day I'm going to stream next week. Probably either Tuesday or Wednesday. Maybe Friday. I'll let you guys know for sure. Renee says that he switched from the Michael Brooks show to watch Doomed. Thank you. He says it was just pedo jokes and anti-Semitism. Well, I don't get why you switched then. That's the good stuff. The progressive atheist said should have waited until the Michael Brooks show was over. Yeah, I should have, but I couldn't. Kennedy tried to jump back and forth. Kennedy came in here specifically because of the Gab issues the chat's been having. Oh, thank you, Kennedy. I appreciate that. I'm apologizing in advance for my nonstop cough and my runny nose. I'm clearly coming down with something, but I would never let that stop me from spending time with all of you. David said, I wish Sam talked about Lyndon LaRouche. That's why you got doomed. That's why you can't get all your news from the Majority Report or the Michael Brooks show. Sorry. Renee says, La douches. That's a good one. Renee also said that I could one-up Michael by getting on Cumtown. I'll go on Cumtown. Or by calling Chelsea Clinton a Coney Island moonface mascot. Well, I'm not going to do that right now. Heimdall said that how have I never heard of this group? Crazy. Yeah, a lot of people are not familiar with the LaRouche people. A lot of people aren't familiar with the LaRouche movement. But they had their moments, and they were big when they were big. David says, if you go down the rabbit hole, LaRouche is connected to most of the alt-right. He's basically the blueprint. Right, in a lot of ways, yeah. I think we mentioned that in the show, for sure. Yeah, on the first half, yeah. Along with Breitbart and Stormfront, says Renee. David says, for instance, it was a LaRouche newsletter that popularized the term cultural Marxism that Jordan Peterson is so fond of using. I did not come across that, David, and I wish I read your comment earlier. I did not realize that. Renee asked, not Bircherism. Yeah, I did not know. Was it really LaRouche? The LaRouches who coined cultural Marxism? Because a couple of early on in this show, if you go back, search the episode names. Cultural Marxism was the episode I did completely with Brandon. What's his name? He wrote a piece for the Daily Dot. Go back in the Doomed archives. Did a whole episode on where cultural Marxism, the term, comes from. Maybe he did mention LaRouche, but I can't recall that. I don't recall that. Simon X says, I fell asleep during the Michael Brooks show for some reason. Well, I'll tell you why, because it's the Michael Brooks show. Grim said, I'm here because of the Michael Brooks show. Well, thank you, Grim, and thank you, Michael Brooks show, for bringing Grim here. And Grim says, thanks for the good news. I guess you didn't hear about Lyndon LaRouche dying before this show. Breaking news here, guys. That's what I do now, I guess. DJ Dodgeable left his best. Absolutely. Heimdall says, okay, I think I get it. Westboro Baptist Church on meth, perhaps? That's a way of explaining some of it, I guess. DJ Dodgeable says, so good to see Maddie B. Thank you. Correct and smart leftist human of the left wing says, Westboro Baptist Church. Okay. DJ Dodgeable, I was so sad when Matt B left the Majority Report. So delighted to find them streaming live. I don't get why people can't find me. Don't know where. Everyone just think I just appeared from the majority report and just fell into a dark hole, never to be seen again? What's going on? I'm not that hard to find. Oh, man. Makes me sad to think about if I, got to get better at that self-promotion. Let people know who used to listen to me that I'm here, I'm alive. I'm not LaRouche yet. Dank Euger says, Matt always on at the same time as Michael. LMAO. Not all the time. Grim says, I'm a guess Lyndon really liked FDR for interring the Japanese, right? Whew. Jay Jaribus, LaRouche is like the OG Alex Jones, is another way to put it. But as we talked about with Jay, Alex Jones has a little bit to do with LaRouche too. LaRouche went on Alex Jones' show a few times. Renee says the FAST used nunchucks in Chile too, so CIA confirmed. Grim says, I wonder if Lyndon might qualify as a homegrown dark precursor to the Nazi boy. Yeah, we mentioned that on the show, I think. Heimdall says red pill moment for this guy. This is a big jump. Well, red pill moment, I would say it was fair to say. DJ Dodgeball says, always with the anti-Semitism, yeesh. Grim says, Americans are so deprived of a Labor Party that they'll be hoodwinked by any pseudo-populist. DJ Dodgeball said, sad but true. Absolutely. Absolutely. Heimdall, our resident Gab, at least person who discovered the show from Gab, referencing when I brought up people who were formerly left, who because of 2016 joined the right, says that was because of the actions of the DNC, not racism. Hillary the warmonger or a wrench in the system. Well, I'm not a big fan of the establishment Democrats. I'm not a big fan of Hillary Clinton. But if you're a leftist, it's about the ideology, it's about the policy, it's not about whoever is fronting the Democratic Party at this point in time. I went up against the Democrats and Democratic pundits many times during the 2016 primaries online. And had a lot of people talk shit who didn't agree with me, and people who used to follow me during the Obama years stopped following me because of how much that sort of infighting on the left grew during that 2016 primary. None of that stuff made me join the right, because that's not what I believe. Hillary Clinton was never going to make me drop everything I stood for, because even if I did truly think that her and the DNC colluded in some way to deny Bernie Sanders the nomination, did they do things specifically to make it harder for Bernie? Absolutely. In the end, did they change any of the votes and actually deny Bernie Sanders a rightfully won nomination? No. And even if they did, I wasn't going to suddenly blame undocumented immigrants and suddenly be for the wall and saying both people in Charlottesville had good people on both sides. It's nothing really to do with that. You can be a leftist, you can be a progressive and not be for what the Democratic Party stands for, and still, if you feel like it, like I do in a lot of ways, not every race, but a lot of them, still feel like you will vote for the Democrat running in a particular race Because while that Democrat isn't perfect, and you dislike many things about that Democrat will get you as close to where you want to go than if the Republican running against that Democrat won. That's just the reality of it. I'm not someone who believes in, starting at the midpoint. We should not be conceding straight up. We should be shooting for the stars. It's only when that's denied do you aim for those incremental steps. And the only way you get to an incremental step that far to the left to begin with is by starting at that super far left position in the first place. For example, you're selling something and for $100, I don't know, you're selling a hard to find old school video game, because I just read that story about an original mint condition Super Mario Brothers game cartridge sold for $100,000. The guy asked for, let's say the guy wanted $200,000. But deep down inside, he would have been happy with $100,000. Well, if he started at $100,000, then the people offering and wanting to haggle would have offered him less, and he would have never gotten that $100,000. So what most likely happened was he started at a higher number and then got an amount that he was still satisfied with. That's how it is here. Matt Brunig, who I'm going to have on the show soon, put out, with his People Policy Project, put out a new paper basically looking at a number of different family proposals that leftists could get behind. They're fantastic. And one of them is Medicare for everyone under the age of 26. And now, I've spoken with Matt on this show previously. Again, go back in the Doomed Archives. You could hear me talking about Matt about Medicare for all and the centrist think tanks, lesser versions of it, like Medicare for everyone or something like that, or Medicare for almost everyone, or some dumb name like that, or whatever. And obviously, we did not like those plans when it comes to Medicare for all. But we conceded, like Matt does in this great policy paper he put out called the Family Fun Pack, that if you cannot get Medicare for all, which should be the number one fight here, then we will move to the secondary positions, which will be easier to fight for because they will be the concession. And that's where he comes up with Medicare for everyone under 26. I mean, that's just how you do good politics. And that's me going off course. All right. Heimdall again. One of the biggest modern day conspiracy theories is believing that half the country are alt-right Nazis. Well, I don't believe that. Not every Trump supporter is a Nazi, but if you're a Nazi, you're most likely a Trump supporter. I mean, even Hillary, in her basket of deplorables, said only about half of them were. In the basket of deplorables. Grimm says at worst it's at most a little short of 1/4, since half the country doesn't vote. So Trump's base is a tiny slice of tens of millions of fash. Well, I get what you're saying, and it's funny. But and it's a good point actually, because the large majority of the country do not vote. But yeah, I don't even agree that that one fourth of the country that supports Trump are fascists or Nazis. Are they sometimes racist? Yes. Are they willing to be racist in order to benefit themselves? Yes. Are they privileged in some ways? Yes. Are they ignorant in some ways? Many ways? Yes. Are they all hopeless? Absolutely not. And I do think that. I think anyone who wants to say that all Trump supporters are so far gone, fuck them. I don't agree with that. What I don't agree with is appealing to them in any way that hurts a marginalized group that's in our base. A marginalized group, period, but our base as well. Pretty much every marginalized group is in our base. You can say that these are my beliefs and they help. You know, Native Americans, Asian Americans, Black Americans, immigrants, men, women, children, Muslims, Jews, Christians, Hindus, atheists, whatever. And then also say to those Trump supporters, if you're not listening to how these policies and these beliefs also benefit you, then let me explain. Or if it's even past that, then I can't help you. But yeah, that's what I think. Grim says, I can see that I'll be listening to hours of Matt to appreciate the right-wing research from Learn to Code, Gab, QAnus, I like that, and more. Grim, please, immerse yourself in the world of Doom. It's great to have you. I'm so glad you found the show. Especially being that it seems like you're someone who's already into a lot of this stuff. So it actually worries me that you didn't already know about the show, which makes me think there's a whole world out there who doesn't know about this show, who's into this stuff. And I'm doing a terrible job marketing. If anyone wants to help me get the word out about this show, let me think of ways to I can't financially compensate you because we're trying to grow the Patreon. I'd be cool with doing that once the Patreon grows a bit more. But let me think of, we could think of cool things to do that would incentivize you to help out in spreading that word to everyone who listens. I'd be down to think of something. I don't know. Let's get more listeners to the show. If you like it. If you don't like it, I'm not going to force you to listen to it in the first place. I'm also not going to force you to make other people listen to it. I'm going to try to go for as long as I can here, but my voice is starting to go. Jessica jumps in and says, enjoy your echo chamber. I was not rude to anyone. I did not curse. All I did was take offense to being called alt-right. And you wonder why people think you are a crazy conspiracy idiot. I didn't see Jessica in here at all. Did my mods remove things Jessica was saying? I have no idea. Kennedy says, y'all must think I'm playing or something. What happened? I missed something in the chat. Jeez. There was some sort of TJ Dodgeable says, Kennedy crushing fools with her banhammer. Let me know what was going on. Listen, I want to run a not tight ship in the chat. I think there's a difference between, and I'm not saying Kennedy did this because I don't know what happened. I trust Kennedy. That's why I gave Kennedy the moderator privileges. But if right-wingers come in here, as long as they're not, dropping the N-word, just randomly typing just to make the chat move without contributing anything, that's when I want that shit removed. But if they're just defending themselves, saying, generic right-wing shit, I'm welcoming to that. Let that go in there. I would love to respond to it even. But I'm believing that Kennedy removed that stuff for a reason. Grimm says they're fleeing, talking about the Saudis. Their fleeing was probably a mutual decision. Amy Goodman covered how Saudis were whisked out of the country before they could stand trial for ish like hit-and-run murders. Correct and smart leftist human of the left wing. Kennedy suppressing speech. Sorry, but we have a constitution, and it applies to this chat. Kennedy says, suppressing speech is my kink. Ooh. Oh, we're at the point where I called one of the guys a George R.R. Martin cosplayer. Grimm says, more like old racist Hagrid. Also, what does this say? Also reminds me of some anti-Catholic wackadoo from some vid on the pagan origins of Christmas on the Way Back Machine, a vid that was funded by some even crazier Desi fella. Send it over, Grim, if you come across it again. Jay Drebus says, yeah, when Lyndon LaRouche said that racist thing about Obama, he was also, yes, Jay, attacking that black dude who supports him. He's fucking insane, says Jay, right? Grim says, that reminds me, I still need to watch The Death of Stalin. Is that on Netflix? I was watching that the other day on Amazon Prime, I think. Might have been Netflix. It was either on Prime or Netflix. I gotta say, I was looking forward to watching it, and I couldn't get through it in one sitting. It wasn't for me, I think, which is weird because I am not someone who ever leaves a movie. I'm someone who says, once you start watching it, you gotta see it through, even for a bad movie. Like, I usually make it through. Maybe I was just tired or something, but I couldn't get through The Death of Stalin. Maybe I need to give it another go. Schumer of the left wing. Honestly, I can see myself giving into a cult as long as I got housing and food, right? Yeah, that's true in some ways, for sure. I can get behind that. Grimm says, to quote Iron Maiden's Bruce Dickinson, only the good die young and only evil people live forever. Right? And Lyndon LaRouche lived to like 96. Jeez. The John says transoceanic railways. Yeah, that whole thing was insane, wasn't it? Renee says, sounds like FDR gone moon logic. Grim says, sounds like Andrew Ryan in BioShock. It's almost like libertarians are the fash. Oh, for sure. That's a great point, Grim. Neo-feudalists, basically. Build cities? Nah, we're going to grow them out of fungus, dude. Mushroom bricks are light and yet strong as cement. I wish I saw these comments. I was honestly speechless after hearing that. Wish I saw these comments. That's great. But I see them now, right? I'm sorry here. My throat's starting to go. I'm going to make it through as much as I can, like I said. Give you guys a full patron-only show. And Jay says, dude was fucking insane. It's really not that complicated. He also said, good point right after that to me. So I don't know where I was there. Where I needed to be told it wasn't that complicated, but then I made a good point. Thank you, though, Jay. Misha jumps in. Misha a little bit late in the chat today. And Grim, thank you for muting the mic when I was coughing up a storm. Yeah, all right. All right. Renee says the Shill Institute. Right. Shill Institute says Grim too. Right. Yeah. Grim says, that adds to me sense of LaRouche being our Alexander Duggan, but thankfully Lyndon stayed fringe. Yeah, he was a nationalist piece of crap. Nativist, says Renee. Grim calling InfoWars InfoWar. Aw, and there were hearts somewhere at this point in the chat. I love when the Doomies are giving each other love. DJ Dodgeable says, good interview. Thank you. And Grim says, I think Patreon probably moved to a tax haven. Maybe. Misha says, yeah, make me a mod. Misha, for sure. You get mod status. To be a mod, I need your full YouTube URL. Someone DM'd me just their YouTube username. A, I couldn't find the username when searching for it on YouTube. And then B, I guess because of that, YouTube couldn't find that. So I couldn't make that person a mod. I need the full URL of your YouTube channel. And that will enable me to tell YouTube I want to give you mod status. Misha gets mod status for sure. My dad jumped in. Danicky? I don't know what my dad's talking about. Julie, I'm confused. Do LaRouche followers actually all live together and not have outside friends or outside jobs? That's a good question. And that wasn't clear from Jay. It's possible some of them live together. I don't think it's a cult in the way that they all live on a compound. But I'm sure there are roomies. When I was doing research on this and looking for some LaRouche people, they basically give phone numbers to different LaRouche pack, I guess, subunits throughout the country. All over. There was literally a list of a dozen. And so they're not all living together. I'm sure there are ones that do live together. But from those clips I was watching, they do a lot of things together. And from the amount of time they spent, I don't know still, but back just a decade ago even, the amount of time they spent out there in public spaces with their table and handing out pamphlets and their posters, they definitely spent a lot of time together. Whether they go off and live together, that's another story. But it wouldn't be surprising to me to find that a number of them were roomies. But it wasn't Waco or something like that, where these folks were all living on a compound together. That's not the case, I don't think. John G. I used to listen to a lot of conspiracy podcasts until I realized a lot of them were pretty sketchy. Have you heard of Freeman or the Free Zone? They sound familiar, and if you send them to me, I might know of them. But off the top of my head, I don't. And they might also be new to me. I'm not sure. Send them to me, John. Mud says, I just found the channel 2 days ago. Well, thank you for finding it. How'd you find it? Anyone who's just joining us, and if the show ends before you can tell me, tweet at me, email me, you could find me anywhere, really. You guys know how to find me now. Let me know how you found the show. I gotta figure out what's going on. Why people don't know. I mean, I know why, because I've told you guys many times, the regular listeners know, I suck at self-promoting. I need to sit down with Michael Brooks, my good friend Michael Brooks, and I've got to ask him to just give me some classes on how to be the master self-promoter that he is. I truly respect it. I joke about it, but it's because I also respect it. John says, well, Renee says used to follow Lip TV. Renee also says avoid Sean Stone. John says he was so much weird. shit. Hold on, I'm lost here. I thought it was cool, but then he had on white supremacists and Holocaust deniers. Right. That's the way a lot of these things go, right? Not that far, but look at Joe Rogan. He's not that far out, but same sort of atmosphere there. Same dynamic. John, have you heard of Joe Atwill? I don't. Again, Atwill sounds familiar, but off the top of my head, I want to say no. Grim says, I vote row A all the way on the Working Families party line. I vote Working Families when I can too, yes. In New York. Dank says, Binder's still live? Oh shit. Like I said, the goal was to go past Michael. I would have started after Michael's show, but the way things worked, I needed to have the guest with my guest. 8:30 was when I had to start. Brian says they're going to try to water down the Green New Deal too. Just wait. Well, yeah, but that's also why they're shooting for the stars. I don't think they ever thought they would get all that. That's smart politics. Dang says I'm from California, so I vote Dem even though it means nothing. Well, doesn't California have ranked choice voting? So doesn't it count actually? In your case for obviously not the presidential races, but for Senate races, congressional races, right? You have ranked choice. That's why we saw two Democrats in the midterms for Dianne Feinstein's seat. Her and what's his face? Can't think off the top of my head. But there were two Democrats in the general. Grim says, I say single payer because it's the goal. Dental and medical and mental included. Absolutely. Brian says, half the internet may be alt-right Nazis, though. Brian says, if there's a hell below, we're all going to go. Grim says, I think the Trump voters figuring it out as they get salty about salt and local tax deductions, state and local tax deductions. Also salt deductions, I'm sure. Dang says, become a patron, folks. Yes, please. He needs to stop Michael Brooks from counter-programming him, though. Right. Well, also, I'm now speaking directly to the YouTube live stream because this is for patrons only now. Jay says, LOL, Matt is not a salesman. I am not. Couldn't sell you... The thing is usually what? A good salesman can sell you like a rock or something. I couldn't sell you free money. Probably. Not a good salesman. Tank says, even when he isn't on his usual day, Brooks comes through with a TMBS episode. Well, Brooks is also making like, what? $8 is the lowest tier on his Patreon, and he's got 2,000 patrons. Do the math. If I was making that money, you guys would be getting an episode every day. I'm being serious, too. This would be a daily show if I was doing that well with Patreon. No joke. I would leave my job. This would be it. And I would do other things too with that money. I would probably start a left-leaning news site or a left-leaning newsletter, giving you guys daily updates on the news along with daily videos. I'd be all in because it'd be my bread and butter. But I'm doing can't do that right now. Giving you guys a little look into my life. I have a kid, man. And a cat. And I got some news. I'll tell you guys. I'll say that in the free show. I'll give you guys a personal news update. Some personal news. Grim says, I just started listening to TMBS in the last month, and Kennedy already earned her kudos for spreading the word. Dank says, your mod is the best. Screw these bitter alt-right weirdos. She's handling business so it wasn't like last week. Absolutely. I'm not saying... I wasn't saying anything about Kennedy. Louis says, have you seen the LaRouche Pack documentary called The True History of the U.S.? I have not, but I came across it, and I gotta watch it. In Kennedy We Trust, says Brian. I want to make an addendum right here if anyone thinks I was questioning Kennedy. I gave Kennedy the first moderator slot because I 100% trust Kennedy to be my mod. Let's be clear. I was just saying that I'm cool with a little bit looser than maybe Kennedy might come across in other chats. Simply because I sort of like egging these guys on a little bit sometimes. I like responding, as you can see with Heimsdahl, when Heimsdahl's not going nuts. Kennedy says it was one of the Nazis from last week, Matt. Got it. Thanks, Kennedy. But I'll pull back. John says that movie sucked, in my opinion. You're talking about Death of Stalin? Brian says it was way better with a couple of cocktails. Yeah, last week was horrible. Last week was somehow worse. The live chat last week with the Nazis was somehow worse than the Gab episode when they were in there. I guess with the Gab episode, even though there was a lot of them and they were being annoying, they were sort of interacting with the content because it was about Gab and they were interested in it. Last week's episode was literally just to bother the chat and to ruin the show, which sucked a lot. The Gab one was annoying, but it was sort of on topic. But yeah, it was... Kennedy says, yeah, it was surprisingly chilled tonight. Yeah, maybe they're moving away because we're so far gone from the Gab episode now. I got a funny Gab story, actually, that from Michael, my guest, who talked about Gab that last episode. Usually I like to keep a little bit of time between my guests, but I think I'm going to have him on again ASAP to talk about this Gab story. It's insane. It has to do with their SEC filings and how many members they're claiming to have. We touched on that in that episode, but he spoke with their web host, and they have some really interesting opinions on how many actual users Gab has. Misha says they're probably chill because they saw there's a mod, right? Kenny laying down the law. Kenny says, what the fuck? I don't want to share my hammer. I feel threatened. But, yeah, Kennedy, I guess Misha is the best person to share the power with. Kennedy and Misha, are you two in the Discord? I'm terrible with Discord. I haven't seen you guys in the Discord, though. If you're not, let me know. I want to make sure you guys are in the Discord. Also, because I'm so bad at Discord, would you guys be more into a Facebook group? My feeling is this. Discord it works for maybe a show like the Michael Brooks show where they're at right now, because it's also used for the Majority Report, his chat. So they already have this huge fan base using it, and it's sort of like this insular hangout, which is cool if you have that many people to begin with. But with me, I think, where the show is at right now, maybe with a Facebook group, again, if you guys are on Facebook, it'll be good because you can invite your friends on Facebook, which will bring new people in, and that shit could be shared on Facebook in general, which spreads it. We could clip things, we could just post stories we come across, funny shit we see on Twitter, and we can spread that under our group, our page, whatever. Let me know how you guys feel about that. I think that might be the route to go with where this show's at. We'll still keep the Discord. We'll try to be more active in there, too. But the Discord would be sort of our private, inside stuff. But our general discussions would be in that Facebook group. What do you guys think about that? Let me know. You can tell me on Twitter. If you're Patreon, you can let me know in the Patreon comments. My personal email is matt@xmattx.com. You can find that on doomedpod.com. You can find that at doom.tv. You can easily let me know. Or just let me know in the live chat. But the problem with the live chat is once I'm done with the show and I shut it off, I might miss your comment, and that's that. I probably will not come across it again. DJ Dodgeable says DJ Danarchy does the music for TMBS. Oh, that's what my dad was telling me. Danarchy put together the MR front half intro. All right, I have to reach out to Danarchy. Grim says, I found the crazed video on The Real Christmas Story. There's a big old white guy in the vid with a beret who rants a bit among others. And Johnson sent me an email about other stuff. DJ Dodgeball says, Cash Friday with Maddie B would be awesome. Listen, I don't know why they've invited me on. They invited me on last year to talk about QAnon on the Majority Report. Maybe I need to nudge them. I haven't asked. I feel weird asking. Again, there's me being weird about self-promotion. But if you guys tell Sam and Michael you want me on their shows, I'm sure they'll do it. Dank says, yeah, we have a jungle primary in California. Brian says, De Leon, right. Oh, Dank says jungle primary isn't quite ranked choice. Yeah, that's what I was thinking of, right. Julie says, Matt, we love you and support you because you're not a shameless self-promoter like Michael. I know you got to try to strike a balance, but don't lose your charm along the way. Why, thank you, Julie. I'll try not to. Brian says, every week I see a couple of people in the Discord put on to Doomed. Word gets around. Good. DJ Dodgeable says, Kennedy Misha 2020. Hell yeah. Brian says that Sticks guy was creepy as fuck. I gotta reach out to him. Sticks and Hammer 666. I gotta reach out to him for sure. He's a fucking psycho. Listen, I gotta get on. Listen, my thing has gotta be to set myself apart. If I'm not gonna be a shameless self-promoter, I gotta actually maybe just say fuck it and go on some of these guys' shows. You guys know me. I'm a fucking staunch leftist. Going on these shows would just be to own them. It would not be giving them some sort of platform because they would be giving me the platform. I'm going to reach out to all these fuckers and try to get on their shows. I'm just going to go for it. Kennedy says, I'm in the Discord, but I lurk. I don't know what you're lurking, Kennedy. Discord, maybe just couple conversations a week. Not much to lurk. I'm going to fix that, though. There'll be stuff to lurk, Kennedy. Misha says, yeah, I'm there. I lurk too. I got to give you stuff. Dank says, I prefer Discord than Facebook. Renee says, definitely Facebook group. Kennedy says, I don't use Facebook. Dank says, I don't use Facebook. But Julie says, yes, Facebook group sounds good. The thing with Facebook is that, and I've seen Chapo's, obviously Chapo is at another level completely than any of these leftist shows. But Chapo's Facebook group, I don't even think it's their official one, it's like their fans one, is incredibly active. And they're constantly sharing things that they find elsewhere, and it just spreads that way. And that's what sort of turned me on to the idea of the Facebook group. We can do both. Graham says, I've been using Discord more than Warframe. I don't even know what Warframe is. Anyway, and I have less use for Facebook these days. Jay Jariba says, I deleted Facebook recently. Jeez. Grim says, Brooks over Cedar in my book. No, I love them both. I can't pick one. Dank says, I had a Facebook, but I deleted it when my aunt sent me a friend request in 2013. Right. Grim says, Sticks rated TYT. Well, that is to give him a platform. TYT is bigger than Sticks. But if I get on Sticks, that's not helping Sticks. That's helping me. He's got a much bigger platform than me. On YouTube, at least. Dank says, Binder going the Sam Cedar route. Debate some fuckboys. But I'll even go one further. I'll go on these fuckboys stream. I know Sam goes on like libertarian streams and stuff like that. But I'll even go on these fucking trashy ass streams if they got a big platform for me to preach to. John G says, yes, be a guest on other shows. It would work for promotion, says Dank, right? Mud says, Styx is down the rabbit hole. Yikes. Some guys I would question. But I don't think Styx... Like I said, actually, I was actually invited on this show that in the literal name of the show was like that fucking Goyim. Goy is that fucking anti-Semitic phrase, Goyim or whatever. That I turned down. That's a show I'm not going to go on. But if it's like, you know, an alt-right, you know, fuck, I would talk to Mike Cernovich for sure. I would talk to fucking Ann Coulter, although she wouldn't talk to me. She's well beyond that. Fucking, even Laura Loomer. People who are on that cusp. I would consider that for sure. And I think I have enough of a rapport with a lot of people that they know there's no turning from me in any way. No concessions being made. You guys have seen that I can handle my own with these guys. Brian says, Chapo subreddit is ridiculous. Right. Dan says, I think Reddit and Facebook is clearly the move to promote yourself. Kennedy says, I think Sam and Michael are both really good in different ways. We don't got to pit two kings against each other. I sat with those guys in a room for every day for almost 5 years. So I agree. Literally the majority report was me and Sam for a little bit with various producers. And then Michael came aboard and it was me, Sam, and Michael for like 4.5 years. Grim says, did Sam Cedar defend J20 resistance? I don't know if he covered it, but he certainly would defend it. He's staunchly on the side of protesters. Kennedy says, please get Laura Loomer on. I have been thinking about reaching out to her, actually. Funny that I mentioned her. One really sad thing. I reached back out to the gun girl, the Kent State gun girl who I had on this show back before she was the Kent State gun girl, Caitlin Bennett. She has not returned my messages. I wanted to get her back on, and she's just not doing it. She recently announced she's going on Jake Paul's show, so maybe she's just too big for me. Renee says, I prefer Binder over Brooks and Sam. He is mean to me, but he lets me express myself to a certain degree. Oh, thank you, Renee. But yes, Kennedy, I will reach out to Loomer. All right, folks. Mudmud says, debate door. Yes, I would. Kennedy says, I started watching MR like a year after you left. Unfortunately, it seems so did most people. Kennedy says, I got kicked off Twitter for telling the gun girl to fight me. And the final comment of the episode, Michael S. The majority report was better with Binder. I can't think of a better way to end this stream. Thank you, patrons. See you all next time on Doomed.